Some dangers hide in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves. Harry Potter thought this year would bring excitement and adventure. He never imagined it would pull him into the darkest trap of his life. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest content. The fourth year at Hogwarts begins with a strange energy in the air. Rumors spread, shadows grow, and whispers of Voldemort returning slowly rise across the wizarding world. Even when everyone tries to enjoy the excitement of the Quidditch World Cup, a feeling of fear quietly slips back into their lives. Then Hogwarts announces something that makes the entire school come alive. The Triwizard Tournament, a legendary contest of courage and skill. Only the bravest and oldest wizards are allowed to enter. Students from different magical schools arrive, filling the castle with new faces, new friendships, and silent competition. But everything changes when the Goblet of Fire unexpectedly chooses a fourth champion. Harry Potter, a name he never submitted, a decision he never made, a danger he never wanted. From this moment, every step Harry takes becomes part of a larger mystery. Each challenge connects to a deeper, darker plan, a path that will lead him face to face with a power the world thought was gone forever. Chapter 1: The Shadow Before the Storm. Every storm gives a warning before it arrives, but sometimes the warning is so quiet that people ignore it. It becomes impossible to escape. Harry Potter's fourth year at Hogwarts was supposed to begin like every other year, simple, predictable, and full of excitement. But even before he opened his eyes on that warm summer morning at the Dursleys' house, something strange was happening in the wizarding world. A thin layer of fear floated quietly in the air, like the first drop of rain before a thunderstorm. Far away from Privet Drive, an old abandoned house stood alone on a hill. The villagers called it the Riddle House. They believed no one had lived there for years, and most people stayed far away from it. But tonight, something was different. A dim light flickered behind its broken windows, and dark shadows moved inside like ghosts returning home. Inside the house, two figures whispered in harsh, cold voices. One voice belonged to Peter Pettigrew, thin, shaky, and full of fear. The second voice was colder, sharper, and more terrifying than ice. It was a voice the world hoped would never return Lord Voldemort. No one knew he was alive. No one knew he was planning something. No one except a simple old man named Frank Bryce, the caretaker who lived nearby. He had worked for the Riddle family nearly all his life. Tonight, when he saw lights inside the dead house, he felt a strange pull in his chest. Something told him not to go. Something told him danger waited behind those walls. But curiosité Fatzlole pushed him forward. Frank entered quietly, step by step, but he was not nearly as quiet as he thought. Voldemort and Pettigrew stopped talking the moment they heard a sound. A flash of green light filled the room, and just like that, the only witness to their secret plan was gone forever. At that same moment, miles away, Harry Potter woke up with a gasp. His scar burned sharply, like fire touching skin. He sat up quickly, heart racing, breath unsteady. He had seen a dream, but it did not feel like a dream. He had seen the Riddle House. He had seen Pettigrew. And worst of all, he had heard Harry rubbed his scar, trying to calm down. He knew this pain. He knew it meant something dark, something real. But Harry didn't want to think about Voldemort so early in the morning. Not when so many good things were coming. The Weasleys had invited him to the Quidditch World Cup, something he had dreamed of seeing since he first learned about the magical world. Harry got out of bed and pulled the curtains aside. The sun was shining peacefully, completely opposite to the nightmare he had just seen. He dressed quickly and reached for his glasses, trying to shake off the fear. He knew the Dursleys would not care if he had a nightmare. They never cared. To them, Harry was just an inconvenience. But today was different. Today it didn't mind the Dursleys at all, because he was leaving soon. As he sat on his bed, a strange thought bothered him. Why did his scar hurt now? It hadn't happened in years. Not like this. Harry tried to convince himself it was only a dream. But deep inside, he felt that something dangerous had started moving again in the world. Suddenly, a loud tapping hit his window. Harry jumped, then smiled. It was an owl. Actually, 3 owls. They had come from different directions, wings flapping and letters tied to their legs. The first owl carried a letter from the Weasleys. Mrs. Weasley wrote that they would pick Harry up the next morning to take him to the Quidditch World Cup. Harry's heart filled with excitement. The second letter was from his best friend, Hermione. She wrote about her summer, her parents, and worries about Harry's scar hurting again. She always noticed everything. The third letter was official from Hogwarts. It contained the usual list of books and supplies. But at the bottom, a new note appeared. Students must prepare for new international guests this year. Harry frowned. Guess. Why? Hogwarts never invited outsiders unless something big was happening. But then he remembered his dream again. Voldemort, Pettigrew. A plan. A name. His name. Harry felt a strange shiver run down his spine. He tried to push the thought away and focus on the excitement of the World Cup. Still, his mind kept returning to the Riddle House, to Voldemort's voice, to the burning in his scar. All day, Harry felt a quiet tension inside him. Even while he helped prepare small chores the Dursleys forced on him, he kept thinking about the dream. The connection between him and Voldemort had always been strange, painful, and impossible to fully understand. But now it felt stronger than before, like their paths were slowly moving toward each other again. That night, when Harry finally lay down to sleep, he stared at the ceiling for a long time. He didn't know what the coming days would bring, but deep in his heart, he sensed a truth he could not ignore. Something dark was returning, something dangerous, and somehow he was already part of it. Still, Harry whispered to himself that he would face whatever come just, like he always had. He had friends, he had strength, and he had hope. The storm had begun far away, in an abandoned house no one remembered. But it was moving toward him, step by step, and he would soon discover that the warning signs were only the beginning of a much larger mystery. A mystery that would lead him into a tournament older than a trap darker than nightmares, and a battle he never asked for. The world was changing. The danger was rising, and Harry Potter's 4th year was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Invitation That Changes. Everything, sometimes the smallest letter, can open the biggest door, one that leads you into a story you never expected to enter. Harry Potter woke up the next morning with mixed feelings, half excitement, half worry. His dream about Voldemort still echoed in his mind. But the bright sunshine reminded him that today something special was going to happen. Today, the Weasleys were coming to take him to the Quidditch World Cup. The thought alone filled his heart with energy. Harry quickly dressed and checked the clock again and again. Every passing minute felt slow. Downstairs, the Dursleys were already awake. Uncle Vernon sat behind the newspaper, Aunt Petunia polished dishes like always, and Dudley tried to secretly eat food he was supposed to avoid. None of them looked at Harry. None of them asked him anything. And Harry preferred it that way. He knew the Weasleys' arrival would definitely annoy them. He could already imagine Uncle Vernon's red face when wizards stepped into his house. Harry quietly ate his toast and tried not to smile. His mind drifted toward his dream again. Voldemort, the Riddle House, his scar burning, it all felt too real. But he shook the thought away. Today was not a day for fear. Today was a day for magic. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Everyone jumped. Uncle Vernon looked up sharply. "Who is that at this hour?" He grumbled. Harry already knew. He stood up instantly. But before he reached the door, a loud boom echoed through the living room fireplace. Uncle Vernon froze, and Petunia dropped a glass. Dudley screamed. And then Mr. Weasley stepped out of the fireplace, surrounded by ashes. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, brushing soot off his cloak. "I hope we're not too early." Uncle Vernon stared at him as if he had seen a dragon. "Why you fired?" "Ah, right," Mr. Weasley said, thinking hard. "I did ask the Ministry to connect your fireplace to the flu network. They must have forgotten to inform you." The Dursleys turned pale. Harry tried not to laugh. Before Uncle Vernon could say anything, 3 more redheads tumbled out. Fred, George, and Ron Weasley. Harry's face instantly lit up. Ran forward and hugged him tightly. Finally! We thought we'd never get here. Fred and George winked and began looking around the Dursleys' spotless living room with mischievous smiles. Lovely place, Fred said. So normal. Painfully normal, George added. Uncle Vernon didn't understand whether to scream or faint. Mr. Weasley tried to calm things down. We're only here to pick up Harry. Won't take much time. But the twins were already dragging Harry's trunk toward the fireplace. Let's go before your uncle explodes, Fred whispered. Harry laughed. He felt lighter already. But before leaving, he looked back at the Dursleys. Mr. Weasley also looked at them with a kind but firm expression. Harry is like one of ours. S.I.D. Hinty. We take care of him. Always. Hermione had once said that love shows without magic, and Mr. Weasley had proven it. Harry felt grateful. With a final pull, Fred tossed some Floo powder into the fire. The flames turned green. "The Burrow!" he shouted. In a blink, they were gone. Harry stepped into the flames next. The green fire swirled around him, spinning like a fast-moving tunnel. Moments later, he landed in the warm, cozy chaos of the Weasley home, the Burrow. Harry felt instantly at peace. Pots floated in the air. A radio spoke on its own. A clock pointed to strange things like time to panic and time to eat. Ginny rushed in. "Harry!" she said excitedly. "You made it!" Mrs. Weasley appeared next and pulled Harry into a motherly hug. "You must be starving. Sit. I'll get breakfast." Harry smiled. He felt more at home here than anywhere else in the world. After breakfast, the entire house buzzed with preparations for the World Cup. Tents, cloaks, warm clothes, food baskets. Everyone moved around with excitement. "Harry, have you ever seen the cup?" Ron asked, while tying his shoes. "Never." "It's massive," George said. "The stadium is like a mountain. And the teams this year unbelievable," Fred added. Harry felt the excitement growing inside him. For a moment, he forgot all about the dream, the burning scar, the shadows in the Riddle house. Life felt normal, happy, magical. But something strange happened while they were packing. Harry felt a sudden, quick sting on his scar. Just for a moment, just enough to remind him that darkness was still out there. He touched his forehead gently. Ron noticed. "Scar hurting?" he asked softly. Harry nodded. "Just a little. I had a weird dream last night." Before Ron could ask more, Mr. Weasley called them. "Come on. Time to leave." Everyone grabbed their bags and stepped outside into the fresh morning air. They began walking toward the hill nearby, where the portkey was hidden on old boot placed secretly to transport them to the stadium. As they walked, Harry couldn't help noticing how everything connected his dream. The visitors coming to Hogwarts, the strange note in the school letter. Something big was happening in the wizarding world, something preparing itself silently. But right now, standing under the bright sky with friends around him, Harry allowed himself to breathe freely. The world had danger, yes, but it also had moments like this, warm, real, full of hope. When they finally reached the hilltop, Mr. Weasley pointed at the dusty boot. "Everyone touch it!" Harry, Ron, Hermione, who had arrived through apparition with the rest of the adults, and the Weasleys placed their hands on it. 3, 2, 1, whoosh! The world spun fast. Wind roared in Harry's ears. His feet left the ground. Colors stretched like long lines. And then thud, they landed on a grassy field filled with thousands of wizards and witches from every corner of the world. Flags, tents, music, magic bursting everywhere. Harry's eyes widened with wonder. The Quidditch World Cup had begun. The air buzzed with excitement. But deep inside the noise and celebration, Harry felt a tiny whisper in his heart. A storm is coming, and this is only the beginning. Chapter 3: Chaos at the World Cup. Even the happiest celebrations can hide shadows, and sometimes a single spark is enough to ignite fear that no one expects. Harry Potter had never seen so many witches and wizards in one place. The Quidditch World Cup Stadium stretched like a massive, magical arena under the clear sky. Tents of every size and color dotted the surrounding fields. Flags flew high, announcing the countries competing this year, and magical fireworks exploded in every color imaginable. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed the Weasleys through the crowd, trying to take everything in. The air smelled of food, excitement, and magic. Everyone was talking, laughing, pointing at magical creatures and rare wands. Harry felt like he had stepped into a world he had only dreamed about. "Look at that dragon," Fred whispered, pointing at a tent that seemed to shimmer. "And over there," George added, "the Irish team has a broom that looks like it could fly off into the clouds any second." Harry smiled, excitement washing away the lingering fear of his dreams. This was a moment for joy, for magic, for friendship. He was surrounded by people who cared for him, and for a few hours everything seemed perfect. But happiness rarely comes without shadows. As the crowd cheered for the opening ceremony, Harry noticed strange faces in the crowd. People in dark robes, huddled together, whispering and looking around nervously. He shivered, not knowing why. His scar prickled softly, a warning he had learned not to ignore. Harry tried to shake it off and focus on the excitement. The teams were now entering the stadium. The French, the Bulgarian, and the Irish players all flew in, performing tricks and cheers for their fans. Harry's eyes widened in awe as he watched the professional players move with skill and speed. The crowd erupted in cheers. The Weasleys laughed, clapping along, and Ron was practically bouncing with excitement. "I can't believe I'm actually here," he shouted. "This is amazing." Hermione smiled, but she was watching the crowd carefully. "Stay alert," she whispered to Harry. "I feel something strange, too." Harry frowned, but tried not to ruin the moment. As night failed, the stadium lights shimmered like stars in the sky. Fireworks filled the air with color, and the stands roared with happiness. Harry felt a deep sense of wonder. He had never imagined a magical world could be so alive. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. People started screaming and running in all directions. Harry turned just in time to see a figure throw something dark into the air. A dark mark, glowing green and menacing, spread across the sky. The Death Eater symbol. Panic spread like wildfire. Wizards and witches ran, some trying to vanish with apparition, others casting protective spells. The celebration turned into chaos in a matter of seconds. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the Weasleys held hands tightly, moving together through the terrified crowd. The magical fireworks collided with green smoke from the Death Eaters. The sound of curses and shouts filled the air. Harry's heart pounded. This was the first real sign that Voldemort's followers were growing stronger, more daring, and closer than anyone had expected. Amid the chaos, Harry caught sight of Mr. Weasley, frantically trying to protect a group of young wizards. "This is not what a World Cup should be," Harry whispered, his voice tense. "No," Mr. Weasley replied, looking grim, "but it shows that danger never sleeps, and we must be ready." The crowd slowly began to calm as the Ministry of Magic Aurors appeared, casting protective spells to contain the Death Eaters. Many fled, leaving behind a trail of fear. Wizards whispered about Voldemort's return, fear mixing with excitement, as if the world could not decide whether to celebrate or panic. Harry noticed the sky clearing, but the green glow lingered in his vision. He rubbed his scar instinctively, feeling the familiar sting. "It's starting," he thought, "and I can feel it again." The group finally found a safe place outside the chaos, near a quiet tent. Harry looked at Ron and Hermione. "Do you think it's over?" he asked softly. Hermione shook her head. "No," she said. "This is only the beginning. Something bigger is coming. I can feel it in the air, in the fear, in your scar." Harry nodded. He had learned to trust her instincts. Suddenly, a strange quiet fell over the crowd. Harry felt it deep in his bones. The fireworks, The cheering, the excitement all gone in an instant. Something was moving through the shadows, unseen but terrifying. He realized then that the Wizarding World was no longer just a place of fun, magic, and games. It was a place where danger could appear at any moment, even at the Quidditch World Cup. For the first time, Harry felt the weight of his role, not just as a spectator of the magical world, but as someone who would be forced to face the darkness rising again. Yet, even in the fear, he felt the spark of courage he had always known. He looked at his friends, his surrogate family, and drew strength from their presence. "We'll face it," he whispered to himself, "together." That night, as the crowd slowly dispersed and magical creatures returned to their tents, Harry stared at the stars above. The Death Eater's mark was gone, but the feeling of unease remained. The festival had ended, but the real story was just beginning. The Wizarding World had seen a glimpse of the danger that lay ahead, and Harry Potter, who had survived so many storms before, knew that the coming months would test him in ways he could never imagine. Something dark had returned, something powerful, and Harry was once again at the center of it. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet, a moment to breathe, a moment to remind himself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And with his friends by his side, A felt ready. The storm was approaching. Shadows were gathering, but Harry Potter was standing strong at the very heart of the magical world he loved, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 4. The Goblet of Fire chooses sometimes. Fate chooses for you, even when you have no choice, and the path it sets is more dangerous than you could ever imagine. The morning at Hogwarts began quietly, but a strange tension lingered in the air. Students whispered excitedly about the Triwizard Tournament, a legendary competition held once every few decades. Magical schools from across Europe would send their bravest champions to compete in 3 life-threatening tasks. Everyone felt the mix of excitement and fear. Harry walked through the castle corridors with Ron and Hermione, trying to keep his mind off the nightmares that haunted him. Yet he couldn't ignore the sharp sting in his scar every now and then. It was like a reminder that darkness was still near. In the Great Hall, the Goblet of Fire sat tall and proud on a golden pedestal. Flames danced within it, and students crowded around, hoping their names would be chosen. Only 3 names would normally be chosen, 1 from each school. Harry watched the older students whispering, some full of hope, others of doubt. Then came the moment of truth. Professor Dumbledore, standing near the goblet, raised his wand. "Let the Triwizard Tournament begin," he announced. The hall fell silent. Every student held their breath. One by one, the goblet spat out names. The first champion from Hogwarts was Cedric Diggory, Hufflepuff's pride and courage in every step. Then, the Beauxbatons champion, Fleur Delacour, appeared, elegant and confident. Last, from Durmstrang, came Victor Krum, a Quidditch star whose fame had reached even Harry's ears. Harry cheered politely for each name, his heart racing with anticipation. Then, a sudden blue glow from the goblet. It spat out a 4th name. Everyone gasped. Silence fell so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Harry Potter. Harry froze. His mouth went dry. He hadn't put his name in the goblet. He had never even considered entering. Yet there it was, his name floating in flames. Whispers turned into gasps. Some students stared in disbelief. Some teachers looked shocked. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly, thoughtful and concerned. "Harry," he said carefully. Harry shook his head, panic rising. "I didn't, Professor. I didn't submit my name." The hall buzzed with murmurs. "How is this possible?" asked Professor McGonagall, frowning. "Magic rarely makes mistakes." Minerva Dumbledore replied, "Yet the goblet has chosen him, and the rules are clear. He must compete." Harry's stomach sank. Compete. Life-threatening tasks. Dragons. Deep water. Maze filled with dangerous obstacles. He hadn't asked for any of this. "But I'm too young," he protested, remembering that only students 17 or older could compete. "It doesn't matter," Dumbledore said softly but firmly. "The goblet has made its choice. You must participate." Panic and fear mixed with a strange thrill in Harry's chest. He looked around at his friends. Ron's face was pale, eyes wide. Hermione clasped his hand tightly. "We'll get through this together," she whispered. "You're not alone, Harry." Despite the fear, Harry felt a spark of courage. He had faced challenges before. Dark forces, impossible tasks, and he had survived. Maybe he could do this too. The students and teachers slowly recovered from the shock. Some congratulated Harry cautiously. Some whispered doubts, but no one could change the fact. He was now a champion. The announcement caused a ripple throughout Hogwarts. Students gossiped in the corridors, some awed by Harry's bravery, others jealous. The tension was thick. Harry knew that every step forward would be watched carefully. Every move he made would be questioned. Yet, amidst the whispers and fear, a deep feeling grew inside him. Determination. He had not chosen this path, but he would face it, and he would survive. The day passed in a blur. Harry attended classes, tried to study, and even practiced magic cautiously. But his mind kept returning to the goblet, the dangerous tasks ahead, and the mysterious magic that had forced his name into the flames. That evening, as the sun set and the castle glowed in golden light, Harry walked to the lake near the castle grounds. He wanted to think, to plan, to breathe. Hermione joined him silently. "It's not fair," Harry said softly. "I never asked for this." "Life is rarely fair, Harry," she replied. "But that doesn't mean we run from it. It means we face it." Her words settled into his heart. He knew she was right, and he knew he had no choice. The tournament would test his courage, his skill, and his very life. But Harry felt a strange connection forming between the tasks. The dangers and the darkness he had sensed returning. Something told him that this tournament was not just a test of magic, but a trap carefully planned by forces he did not yet understand. That night, as Harry lay in bed, he thought about the goblet's flames, the fourth name, and the challenges ahead. Fear mixed with excitement, courage mixed with doubt, and above all, he felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. The storm of the Triwizard Tournament had begun. Shadows were moving, and Harry Potter, who had survived so much already, knew that this year would change everything. He had been chosen. He could not refuse. And somewhere in the dark corners of the magical world, forces watched, waiting, planning. The first task, the dragon, the depths of the Black Lake, and the dangerous maze were all coming. And Harry would face them, one step at a time. Brave, strong, determined. Chapter 5. The first task, courage, is not the absence of fear. It is facing the impossible when every instinct screams to run. The morning of the first task of the Triwizard Tournament dawned crisp and bright. Hogwarts was buzzing with nervous excitement. Students crowded near the arena, whispering and pointing at the enormous dragon cages. Harry walked with Ron and Hermione, trying to calm his racing heart. His stomach churned with a mix of fear and anticipation. Dragons. He had faced trolls and dark wizards, but a dragon was something different, something wild, untamable, deadly. The arena looked massive, with walls that seemed to stretch endlessly, and the cages held dragons of all shapes and sizes, each more terrifying than the last. Harry could feel the tension around him. Even the older champions, Victor Crumb, Cedric Diggory, and Fleur de la Cour, looked nervous. Dumbledore stood at the center, calm but serious. "Remember," he said, "the first task is a test of courage, skill, and strategy. Every champion must face a dragon, and every choice counts." Harry swallowed hard. He could hear the whispers of the crowd. Some students cheered for him, some doubted him, but he focused on his friends. Ron and Hermione gave him encouraging smiles. "You've got this," Hermione whispered. "Just stay calm, think, and use what you know." The champions were led one by one to the dragon's cages. Harry's cage held a Hungarian horntail, A dragon with scales black as night, and eyes full of fire, its wings stretched wide, ready to strike, and its tail lashed violently. Harry's heart pounded. He remembered Hagrid's words. These creatures are dangerous. Respect them, but never underestimate them. The horned beast roared, sending a wave of heat across the arena. Harry's instinct screamed to run, but he took a deep breath, steadying himself. The whistle blew, and the cage opened. Harry stepped into the arena, every eye on him. The dragon charged instantly. Flames erupted from its mouth. Harry ducked, rolling to the side, feeling the heat singe his robes. Panic flared in his chest, but then he remembered his training, the spells he had practiced, and most importantly, his courage. I can do this. I have to do this, he told himself. Harry raised his wand and cast Disarm to distract the dragon, then used Summoning Charm to grab his broom from the side. In one swift motion, he mounted it and soared into the sky. The dragon lunged, fire blazing, but Harry darted and dodged, every movement precise. The crowd gasped and cheered. He felt adrenaline surge through his veins, fear mixing with exhilaration. The Hungarian Horntail was relentless. But Harry's strategy was simple. Stay calm, stay focused, and wait for the right moment. When the dragon turned to charge again, Harry dove, swooped low, and grabbed the golden egg key to the next task. Triumph and relief filled him as he flew back to the starting point, landing safely before the dragon could attack again. The arena erupted in applause. Harry's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He had faced the impossible, stared death in the eyes, and survived. Cedric, Victor, and Fleur all performed admirably in their own ways, showing skill and bravery, but Harry's successful strategy highlighted his courage and quick thinking. Later, back at the castle, Harry sat quietly, holding the golden egg. Its surface gleamed with a strange, magical aura. He opened it carefully, listening to the screeching sounds inside. Hermione leaned over, whispering, "It's a clue for the next task. You'll need to figure it out." Harry frowned, realizing that this tournament was not just about strength and bravery. It was about intelligence, problem-solving, and understanding magic in ways he hadn't before. Each task would push him further, testing his limits, and most importantly, connecting to the growing danger he felt in the world. That night, Harry lay in bed, thinking about the dragon, the egg, and what lay ahead. Fear lingered, but determination burned stronger. He had survived the first task, but the challenges ahead, deep water, dangerous creatures, and the mysterious maze would demand even more. He knew he could rely on his friends, his instincts, and his courage, but he also knew that the tournament was only one part of a larger story. Somewhere, dark forces were watching, waiting, planning. Harry's scar had not hurt today, but he could feel a quiet tension in the air. It was as if the magical world itself was holding its breath, preparing for the coming storm. Despite the fear, Harry felt ready. He had faced danger before, and he could face it again. The Triwizard Tournament had begun in full, and every moment now mattered. The dragon had tested him. The golden egg had challenged his mind, and the shadows in the wizarding world had begun to stir. Harry Potter, brave, determined, and unyielding, was ready to face what came next. The first task was over, but the journey had only begun. The tournament would test everything he had, and the darkness would grow stronger with every step. Yet Harry held his head high, knowing that courage was not just about surviving, it was about facing the impossible, no matter how terrifying it seemed. The first task had proved one thing. Harry Potter was ready to fight, to learn, and to confront the darkness lurking in every corner of the magical world. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 6: Secrets Beneath the Lake. Some challenges are hidden beneath calm waters, and the bravest hearts must dive deep into the unknown to find the truth. The morning after the first task, Harry felt a strange mix of pride and unease. The Hungarian Horntail had tested him, and he had survived, but the golden egg he had claimed now whispered a riddle he could not yet solve. Hermione and Ron crowded around him in the Gryffindor common room, urging him to focus. "It's a clue," Hermione said firmly, pointing to the egg. "It's magical. You need to listen carefully." Harry held it close to his ear, and a high-pitched screeching noise filled his mind. "It sounds like music," he murmured. Hermione's eyes widened. "Exactly. It's a clue for the second task. You'll need to figure out how to interpret it." Harry frowned. The first task had been physical strength, courage, and strategy. The second task, he realized, would test his intelligence, creativity, and understanding of magic in ways he had never imagined. At breakfast, Dumbledore addressed the champions quietly, giving them guidance without revealing too much. "The second task will test your ability to save what is precious to you. Think carefully. Time and magic will be your greatest tools." Harry left the Great Hall with a sense of anticipation. He and Ron walked to the library, where Hermione had already reserved several books on magical creatures, underwater spells, and breathing charms. Hours passed as they studied, tried spells, and discussed strategies. Harry realized that the Golden Egg's music could only be understood underwater. But how? How would he breathe? How would he navigate? And what exactly was he looking for? By evening, a plan began to form. Harry had seen Dobby perform a bubble charm and remembered Gillyweed, a magical plant that allowed the user to breathe underwater. Maybe that could help. He confided in Hermione and Ron. Hermione nodded, impressed by his thinking. "It makes sense," she said. "You'll need to retrieve something valuable from the bottom of the lake. That's why the egg sang it's a warning and a guide." That night, Harry could barely sleep. His mind replayed the first task, the fire-breathing dragon, and now the new challenge looming beneath the Black Lake. Every instinct whispered caution, yet every heartbeat whispered courage. He knew that the Triwizard Tournament was not just about competition, it was about preparing champions for dangers far beyond. Hogwarts, dangers that could strike the wizarding world itself. The next morning, the champions were led to the Black Lake. The task would begin at sunset, but everyone had to be ready. The lake lay calm, reflecting the golden sky above. It looked peaceful, but Harry knew better. Darkness lurked beneath. He tested spells to help him navigate underwater, his wand movements careful, precise. Hermione helped him prepare potions, charms, and strategies. "Don't rush," she advised. "Think. Observe. Act." Victor Krum, Cedric, and Fleur, each prepared, in their own way. Cedric practiced calm breathing, while Fleur focused on elegance and precision. Victor, quiet as always, concentrated on his physical strength. The sun dipped low, and the time for the second task arrived. The champions approached the water's edge, hearts pounding. Dumbledore's calm voice carried over the lake. "Remember, bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the strength to act despite it." Harry's scar had been quiet all day, but now he felt a faint prickle, like a reminder that danger still watched him. Focus tith. Gillyweed in hand, he dove into the icy water, feeling the cold shock his body. He breathed easily, the magical plant working as intended. Underwater, the world shifted. Strange creatures swam past. Dark shapes moved in the shadows. Bubbles escaped from Harry's mouth as he listened to the Golden Egg's music guiding him. It was clear and now rhythmic pulses, pointing the way. Harry swam carefully, weaving through kelp, rocks, and schools of fish. He could see the merpeople observing him from a distance, their expressions unreadable. The egg's music guided him to a cluster of chained figure students, his friends, bound by magical ropes at the bottom of the lake. Panic rose briefly, but Harry forced himself to think each student's chains had charms that could be broken with the right spell. He moved quickly, casting spells he had learned in class, whispering Aloe Mora and Rictus to loosen the bindings. He rescued each student carefully, mindful of the dangers around him. As he reached the last student, a shadow passed nearby, a creature, dark and swift, gliding silently. Harry's heart leaped. Danger was real, even here. He concentrated, focusing on speed and precision, keeping his wand ready. With a final push, all the students were free. The music from the Golden Egg shifted, signaling success. Harry swam to the surface, carrying the last student, lungs burning but spirits soaring. The crowd erupted into cheers as he broke through the water. Victorious, he had solved the riddle, faced the unknown, and saved those in peril. Hermione and Ron ran forward, hugging him tightly. "I knew you could do it," Hermione exclaimed. Harry smiled, exhausted but proud. He realized that the second task had not only tested his magical ability, but also his courage, problem-solving, and compassion. Back at the castle, Harry lay in bed that night, reflecting on the day. The tournament was far from over. The maze awaited. The shadowy plans of dark forces loomed closer. His scar ached faintly, a reminder that Voldemort's presence was never far. But tonight, Harry felt stronger, braver, more capable. He had survived fire, faced the depths, and saved lives. The magical world was dangerous, yes, but he had friends, courage, and determination on his side. The Black Lake had tested him, and he had answered the call. The storm was far from over, but Harry Potter, resilient and unyielding, was ready for whatever came next. And somewhere beyond the lake, beyond the castle, shadows were stirring, preparing for the ultimate challenge that awaited him. Chapter 7. The Maze of Shadows. The hardest paths are not always the longest. They are the ones that challenge your heart, your mind, and your courage all at once. The final task of the Triwizard Tournament had arrived. Hogwarts had been buzzing with whispers for days, students speculating about the dangers hidden inside the maze. Harry, Cedric, Victor, and Fleur stood at the edge, staring at the towering hedges stretching endlessly in every direction. Every wall looked alike. Every shadow seemed to move. The maze was alive, almost breathing, waiting for them to enter. Harry felt his scar prickle faintly, a reminder that darkness lingered in the world, even outside the maze. Ron and Hermione had tried to reassure him, but he knew this task would be unlike the others. Courage, strategy, and quick thinking would all be required, and luck too. Dumbledore's calm voice echoed across the field. "Remember, the maze tests you in ways you cannot predict. Trust in your instincts, your friends, and yourself." The whistle blew, and the champions entered the hedges. At first, the path seemed simple. Harry moved carefully, listening for any sounds of approaching champions or traps. Magical obstacles appeared without warning, creatures that lunged from the shadows, walls that shifted mysteriously, and thorns enchanted to trap the unwary. Harry ducked, dodged, and cast protective spells, his wand movements precise and quick. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. He thought about Cedric and the other champions, aware they were facing similar dangers nearby. Every twist and turn connected to the larger purpose of the maze to test bravery, intelligence, and endurance. The first magical obstacle was a boggart, taking the form of Harry's worst fear. Harry froze, feeling panic rise, but remembered Lupin's lessons on courage. He raised his wand firmly, muttering, "Ridiculous." The boggart transformed into something harmless, disappearing in a puff of smoke. Harry's heart raced, but he pressed forward, deeper into the maze. The maze shifted again, paths closing and opening unpredictably. He heard distant shouts of encouragement, some of alarm. Every corner held danger. Thorny vines lashed, enchanted statues attacked, and magical illusions tried to confuse him. Harry focused on the golden cup at the center of the maze. That was the goal. Every choice he made, every spell cast, brought him closer. At one point, he faced a narrow path with enchanted fire blocking the way. The flames danced aggressively, threatening to burn anyone who passed. Harry analyzed the pattern, timing his movements perfectly, darting through the fire without getting touched. Sweat dripped down his face, and his heart pounded with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The maze tested not only his magic, but his patience and observation. Finally, he saw the golden cup gleaming in the distance, almost calling to him. Relief surged, but he knew danger still awaited. Magical creatures lunged from the shadows, and he had to fight his way carefully. Cedric appeared briefly beside him, signaling silently, then disappeared. Victor and Fleur moved carefully in their own directions. The champions had to compete, but there was unspoken respect among them. Harry reached the final stretch. His chest heaved. Wand reddened. Just as he grabbed the golden cup, a strange sensation enveloped Hemapul, like being dragged into another world. The ground disappeared beneath him. Suddenly, he found himself standing in a dark, eerie graveyard. His heart stopped. The maze had not ended. This was a trap. He saw Voldemort rising from the shadows, his followers surrounding him. A chill of terror ran through Harry. Cedric's body lay beside him, lifeless. Harry's courage surged, mingled with grief and rage. He had faced dragons, deep lakes, and shifting mazes, but nothing prepared him for this moment. Voldemort's voice echoed, cold and cruel, announcing the return of darkness. Harry barely had time to react before the Death Eaters advanced. Every instinct screamed to fight, to survive, to protect. He raised his wand, ready to face impossible odds, knowing he could not run. In that instant, the Triwizard Tournament shifted from a competition into a battle for life. Harry realized that every task, every magical obstacle, and every lesson he had learned was preparation for this confrontation. The maze had tested his courage and skill, but the graveyard would test his heart, his wits, and his very soul. Fear surged, but Harry remembered Dumbledore's words. Courage is acting despite fear. He raised his wand, ready to fight. The shadows pressed closer, but Harry's mind was sharp, his heart brave, and his determination unbreakable. He had survived fire, water, and shifting hedges. He could survive this. Voldemort had returned. Darkness had returned. But Harry Potter, armed with courage, loyalty, and hope, was ready to face whatever came next. The maze was only the beginning. The storm had reached its peak, and the battle was about to unfold. Harry stood tall, wand steady, heart racing, ready to confront the darkness he had long feared. And in that graveyard, surrounded by shadows, he knew that bravery would be the only path to survival, and friendship would be the light that guided him through the deepest night. Chapter 8. The Graveyard and the Rising Darkness. Some moments change everything, and the darkest night can reveal truths that no light could ever show. Harry Potter stood in the graveyard, heart pounding, wand trembling in his hand. The cold wind whispered around him, carrying the stench of decay and death. Cedric Diggory lay lifeless on the ground, and Harry's chest tightened with grief and disbelief. He had survived dragons, lake monsters, and shifting Masizboot. Nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Voldemort's red eyes gleamed with cruelty, his pale face expressionless. Around him, Death Eaters muttered curses and spells, shadows moving in perfect coordination. Harry felt fear rise like a wave threatening to swallow him. Yet, beneath the fear, a spark of determination flared. He could not let Voldemort win. He would not allow darkness to spread further. Voldemort raised his wand slowly. His voice cut through the cold air, sharp and cruel. "Potter, we meet again." Harry's grip tightened on his wand. Memories of past battles, of fallen friends, of courage in impossible moments, surged through him. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. The duel began. Spells flew in every direction. Light against dark, courage against terror. Harry ducked behind a gravestone, fire spells narrowly missing his head. He countered with his own magic, each movement precise, each thought focused. The graveyard echoed with the clash of wands and the hissing of curses. Harry realized that survival alone was not enough. He needed strategy, quick thinking, and the strength to act even when hope seemed distant. Voldemort advanced, forcing Harry to retreat. Fear tried to dominate his mind, but he focused on the lessons he had learned at Hogwarts: friendship, loyalty, courage, and clever use of magic. Every spell Harry cast was deliberate, every movement careful. He used obstacles, shadows, and terrain to his advantage, remembering that even the smallest strategy could save his life. Suddenly, Voldemort called upon the power of his followers. Death Eaters lunged from the shadows, adding chaos to the battlefield. Harry had to fight not only for himself, but to survive long enough to escape this nightmare. Then, a sudden surge of magic pulsed through Harry. The connection between him and Voldemort, the scar, the pain, the memories of the past. He realized that Voldemort's strength depended on fear, hatred, and control. If Harry stayed calm, focused, and brave, he could turn that power against him. The thought strengthened his resolve. He cast a powerful shield, deflecting the curses aimed at him. A bright flash of light erupted as spells collided, illuminating the graveyard with an eerie glow. Harry knew he needed more than just defense. He needed a plan. Using quick thinking, he created distractions, moved strategically between gravestones, and pushed Voldemort's followers into temporary confusion. Every second counted. The duel intensified. Harry felt exhaustion, fear, and pain mixing in his body, but he refused to give in. His mind flashed back to Cedric, to his friends at Hogwarts, to every moment of courage he had ever shown. Harry understood now. Bravery was not the absence of fear, it was the ability to act despite it. The moment came when Voldemort raised his wand for a final strike. Harry's instincts screamed. He shouted spells, dodged, and cast protective charms in a rapid sequence, weaving magic in a way that surprised even him. A final burst of light erupted, separating them. Harry realized then that escape was necessary. Survival was key. Using the confusion he had created, he grabbed Cedric's body and concentrated on a single thought. Return to Hogwarts. With every ounce of magic and courage he possessed, he focused on the Portkeitha golden cup that had brought him here. The world twisted around him. The cold graveyard, the shadows, the danger all disappeared in a flash of light. Harry collapsed onto the grass outside the Hogwarts grounds, breathing heavily, heart racing. Cedric was gone. He had vanished with the Portkey-boot. Harry had survived. The weight of the moment pressed on him. Voldemort had returned. Darkness had risen. The Wizarding World was no longer safe, and Harry knew that this was only the beginning. As dawn broke over the castle, Harry made his way to His eyes were red from exhaustion, his hands still trembling, but his spirit was alive. "Professor," he gasped. "He's back." He's back. Dumbledore's face was grave but calm. "I feared this moment." He sighed softly. "The prophecy, the darkness, it has returned, and it will challenge us all. But you have survived, Harry, and that is the first step. Courage, determination, and loyalty, these will guide you." Harry nodded, feeling both relief and the weight of responsibility. He had faced the impossible, he had witnessed the rise of darkness firsthand, and he knew that the coming days, months, and years would demand even more bravery, skill, and wisdom. The graveyard had changed him. The Triwizard Tournament had tested him in unimaginable ways, but the real test, the battle against the darkness that now lurked openly in the world, was only beginning. Harry walked back to the castle, Scar throbbing faintly, but courage burning brightly. Friends waited, allies, mentors, and even the magical world itself would be needed. Voldemort had returned, but so had Harry's determination. He understood now that the path ahead would be dark, dangerous, and uncertain, but he would face it. He would survive. He would fight, and he would not be alone. The storm of shadows had risen, but so had the light of courage, friendship, and hope. Harry Potter was ready for the battles that lay ahead, ready to face the darkness, no matter how deep it reached, ready to protect the magical world he loved. Chapter 9. The Wizarding World reacts when darkness returns. The world notices, and the brave must rise before fear swallows everyone. The morning after the graveyard incident, the Wizarding World was in shock. Word of Voldemort's return spread like wildfire, whispered from Diagon Alley to the farthest corners of magical Europe. Newspapers carried sensational headlines. Families whispered anxiously in their homes. Wizards and witches looked over their shoulders, sensing that life would never be the same. Harry woke in the Gryffindor common room, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. His scar throbbed faintly, a lingering reminder of the graveyard encounter. He tried to rest, but the memories of the duel, the roar of curses, the sight of Cedric Voldemort's cruel smiler, fused to leave his mind. Hermione and Ron sat beside him, eyes full of concern and support. "Harry, you need to eat," Hermione said softly. "You've been through so much." Harry nodded, trying to focus on the present. Outside, students whispered, some in awe, some in fear. It was clear that Hogwarts itself felt the tension, the sense that something dark had returned to the world. Dumbledore convened a special assembly in the Great Hall. Every student and teacher gathered, their faces tense. "The events of last night," Dumbledore began, voice calm but serious, "are a reminder that the darkness is not gone. Voldemort has returned, and we must prepare for the challenges ahead." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Fear and disbelief mingled in the air. Harry felt the weight of every eye in the room, every expectation. He had survived the graveyard, but survival came with responsibility. He realized that his role was no longer just about Hogwarts or the Triwizard Tournament. It was about the protection of the wizarding world itself. In the following days, the Ministry of Magic reacted swiftly, holding emergency meetings and sending notices across the magical community. Wizards everywhere, trained, guarded, and prepared for the threat that had returned after years of fear and speculation. Harry, Ron, and Hermione continued to study and practice, knowing that knowledge and skill were essential weapons. The golden egg, which had guided Harry through the second task, now sat on his desk, a constant reminder that challenges required both courage and intelligence. Friends and mentors visited Harry often. Dumbledore offered guidance, explaining the importance of vigilance and wisdom. Sirius Black, though distant in his grief and frustration, reminded Harry to remain brave and cautious. Every conversation, every lesson, strengthened Harry's understanding that the return of Voldemort was not just a personal danger, it was a threat to everyone. Meanwhile, Harry noticed subtle changes among his peers. Some students whispered of fear, avoiding the hallways where Harry walked. Others treated him as if he were the bridge between hope and despair. Harry felt a strange mixture of pride and loneliness. He had survived challenges that others had not even imagined. He had stared into the darkness and returned. Yet, he also knew that the burden of survival carried with it responsibility and sorrow. Days passed, but the unease remained. Magical newspapers reported sightings of Death Eaters in distant towns, attacks on isolated wizards, and mysterious disappearances. The sense of safety that had once enveloped the wizarding world vanished. Harry and his friends trained tirelessly, preparing for the unknown. They practiced spells, learned defensive magic, and studied strategies for survival. Every lesson, every preparation, reminded them that courage was not optional. It was essential. One afternoon, while walking through the castle grounds, Harry reflected on the events that had unfolded. The Triwizard Tournament had tested him physically and mentally. The graveyard had tested his courage and heart. And now, the wizarding world itself seemed to test him in a different way through fear, uncertainty, and the burden of responsibility. Harry understood that he could not face this alone. Ron and Hermione were by his side, unwavering in loyalty and support. Teachers, mentors, and friends all offered guidance. Even in the face of darkness, Harry realized that hope and unity could shine brighter than fear. As night fell, Harry gazed at the stars above Hogwarts. The world had changed, and danger lingered closer than ever. Voldemort had returned, shadows were rising, and the magical world would never be the same. But Harry felt a quiet determination, a spark that refused to be extinguished. Courage, loyalty, friendship, and hope, these were the forces that would guide him forward. The challenges ahead were uncertain, dark, and dangerous. Yet Harry Potter, who had survived dragons, underwater terrors, shifting mazes, and a face-to-face encounter with Voldemort himself, was ready. The wizarding world reacted in fear, confusion, and all but one thing was certain. Harry Potter would stand against the darkness. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would do so again. The battle for the future of the magical world had begun. Shadows loomed, but courage remained. Harry Potter understood that survival was only the first step, and now it was time to prepare for what lay ahead, facing Voldemort, understanding the prophecy, and protecting everyone he loved. The world had changed. Darkness had returned, but Harry's determination burned brighter than ever. The storm was not over. It was only beginning, and Harry Potter was ready to face it, with every ounce of courage, heart, and magic he possessed. Chapter 10. The final journey. Dawn broke over the shadowed forest, the first rays of sunlight piercing the dense canopy and scattering gold across the frost-laden ground. Lyra stood at the edge of the trees, the alethiometer warm in her pocket, vibrating softly as if urging her onward. Pan perched alluringly on her shoulder, eyes scanning the path ahead. The north stretched before her, vast, wild, and full of both peril and promise. After rivers, mountains, valleys, and forests, this was the final stretchy journey that would test every lesson she had learned, every ounce of courage, wisdom, and heart she had gathered along the way. The child from the hidden valley walked close, their hand in hers, trusting her completely. Lyra felt the full weight of responsibility. She had learned that the alethiometer guided, but did not decide. The choices were hers alone. Every step, every action, carried meaning, rippling outward in ways she could not yet see. The compass pulsed with steady reassurance, a quiet heartbeat she could follow even in the most uncertain moments. The path led them to a frozen plain, vast and open, where the wind swept relentlessly across the snow. The sky was a pale gray, heavy with clouds, and the distant horizon seemed endless. Lyra hesitated for a moment, feeling fear that had haunted her since the beginning of the journey. But she remembered the lessons of the mountains, the frozen river, the shadowed forest. Courage was not the absence of fear, she reminded herself. It was the determination to move forward despite it. Step by step, they crossed the plain. The wind tugged at their cloaks, and snow stung their faces, but Lyra kept her gaze fixed on the horizon. The alethiometer pulsed gently, guiding her through invisible currents of danger and warning. Pan remained vigilant, small body poised to defend, eyes alert for even the slightest movement. The child's trust grounded her, reminding her that her choices affected more than herself. Every decision had weight. Every moment was a test of heart as much as of skill. Suddenly, a shape emerged from the swirling snow, a massive figure, cloaked in shadows, moving with deliberate power. Lyra's heart leaped, and the alethiometer pulsed urgently. This was the final challenge, the last obstacle before the truths she sought could be revealed. She drew herself up, voice steady, despite the fear threading through her chest. "We are not afraid," she said, more to herself than the figure. "We follow truth." The shadowed figure halted, observing. Then it spoke, voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of the North itself. "You have come far, child of courage. You have faced rivers, mountains, valleys, and forests. You have protected others, trusted the compass, and followed your heart. Yet the final truth awaits. Will you face it, knowing it may change you forever?" Lyra swallowed hard. She had known from the beginning that the journey would demand everything, and now the moment had arrived. She nodded, feeling the pulse of the alethiometer steady against her fingers. "I am ready," she said. The figure stepped aside, revealing a small clearing where the snow glimmered like crystal. At the center stood a pedestal, carved from ice and stone, ancient and silent. On it lay an object wrapped in golden cloth. The alethiometer pulsed strongly now, vibrating as if insisting she move forward. Lyra's fingers trembled slightly, but she stepped into the clearing, Pan close, the child following cautiously. Every step felt weighted with destiny, every breath a silent prayer for courage. She reached the pedestal and carefully lifted the cloth. Beneath it lay a small, golden key, delicate, yet radiant with an inner light. The alethiometer's pulse quickened, almost jubilant, and Lyra understood immediately. This key was not merely an object. It was a symbol, a tool, a choice. It represented knowledge, responsibility, and the power to unlock hidden truths both in the world and within herself. The compass had guided her here, but what she chose to do next would define the path forward. The shadowed figure spoke again, voice calm and deep. "The key is yours. It unlocks more than doors, it unlocks understanding. What you do with it will shape not only your fate, but the lives of those who follow. Will you use it wisely?" Lyra's heart raced, but she felt a quiet clarity. She had learned the lessons of the journey: courage in the face of danger, patience through uncertainty, wisdom in choice, and compassion for those who could not protect themselves. With Pan perched on her shoulder and the child at her side, she understood that power was meaningful only when paired with heart. Lyra lifted the key, feeling its warmth seep into her hands. The alethiometer pulsed in harmony, a quiet affirmation that she had grown, learned, and been prepared for this moment. She knew that the journey was not over. The north still held mysteries, challenges, and shadows, but she had reached a threshold. The courage, insight, and compassion she had gathered would guide her through whatever lay ahead. The shadowed figure stepped back, fading slowly into the swirling wind and snow. The North watches, guides, and tests, it said. Those who endure and follow truth will find their path. Remember these, child of courage. The journey is never truly complete, but each choice brings clarity. Lyra watched until the figure disappeared entirely, leaving only the sound of wind through the snow and the soft pulse of the alethiometer in her pocket. Night fell over the frozen plain, and Lyra, Pan, and the child made a small camp. The stars glittered above, sharp and clear in the cold northern sky. Lyra held the key in her hand, feeling its weight not as a burden, but as a responsibility and a promise. The journey had tested her in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally, but it had also shaped her into someone capable of understanding truth, making difficult choices, and protecting those who depended on her. As she drifted into sleep, Lyra felt a quiet certainty settle over her. The North had revealed its lessons, guiding her through shadow, snow, and uncertainty. The alethiometer pulsed softly beside her, a heartbeat of truth she could carry into every choice to come. She understood that life itself was a series of journeys, each requiring courage, heart, and wisdom, and though the path ahead was still unknown, she was ready. The North tests those who walk its roads. It measures courage, sharpens wisdom, and reveals truth only to the brave. And those who endure, who act with heart, and follow the quiet guidance of destiny, will discover not just the path ahead, but the strength within themselves.